Welcome back to the High Elves Abridged, where last time we pretty much just fought a whole load of battles against the remnants of Angmar, trying to hold on to the territory we took from them. We did make a bit of forward progress when we took a random village off on the other side of the map, which we can turn into a moneymaker. And now the defences continue as we here try to challenge a force besieging one of our small settlements. We need to do something about the fact we're going to be coming onto the field from 3 directions, which isn't too good. Our army's actually quite big, if very weirdly composed. It's just really separated. It's the scraps of various bits and survivors of other armies and some reinforcements. So the first priority is to pull everything down to the bottom of the map so we can make a nice big formation. The enemy did challenge our initial movements with 8 wargs. Luckily our horse archers can shoot them down. The other group coming down the west side of the map was left unmolested, so we just ran over to our original position. Then we've got a nice bit of early harassment because their pikes can do nothing against our horse archers. They're not even trying to walk towards them this time. Just going to tank those shots on the flank as well. So we take out a pike unit early on, and then everything else starts coming towards us. For reasons unknown, I appear to have deployed my front line behind the ballista which we have in our army. I decided to just eat the enemy's charge onto the ballista for some reason. It's like that Game of Thrones episode all over again. So now we're going to counter-attack. I guess the wargs have shot their shot and wasted it on the front of a ballista, who probably isn't going to be that important to our army overall. Now we can kill the wargs with flank attacks from our cav. Those wargs came way ahead of everything else, so we're free to pretty much gang up on these guys, and we easily take out the enemy's cavalry. Then everything else starts coming in, and this time I've changed my formation. Now the ballistas are behind the front line. They're probably going to be more happy with that. They can shoot out and possibly hit something. You can't really tell what they're doing without the flaming ammunition mode turned on. But I don't have it turned on. I'm pretty sure they reload faster or something without it on, so it's probably killing more to have the regular mode. You just can't tell. Not really sure, of course, because I can't tell. As for this fight, it devolves into 2 main blobs fighting each other, one of which we've got the enemy surrounded in, and then some other stuff where I'm basically running about with cav. The enemy are chasing me, and that's fine because it's the classic case of those 11 cavalrymen are defeating an enemy unit effectively by just making them run away from the fight. And we're going to use all of our horse archers, who are now out of ammo, to just run into these blobs and try to rout them. The issue is that the enemy have 2 generals on the field, so just surrounding them or charging them with cav isn't enough to drive them away. This means this fight's going to be a bit of a grind, and basically we didn't get them to rout until we'd almost killed all of them. Here we are a bit later, closer to that point, and stuff starts to rout away or fight to the death. I think fighting to the death is broken, so that's the same as routing, but the generals will stay in the fight, so we've thinned out the enemy army, just leaving the heavy infantry to kill. And yes, that's just going to be a case of sacrificing a bunch of our own troops to eventually kill them back, since our trash troops are kind of good. Here's me trying to charge a unit, but it seems to have turned around in the melee and takes the charge on the front very cunningly. So that didn't do anything, plus I'm pretty sure our cav aren't very good anyway. You can see at this stage it's like our entire army fighting 1 or 2 tiny enemy units, and eventually we grind those guys down and get a win with no particularly fancy tactics. They just died because we have loads of stuff. One of the units routs before the general is dead, so we have to continue the battle to make sure he dies. Here we are a bit later. The result wasn't that bad actually. That was a pretty scrappy battle where we didn't really do anything clever, but we seemed not to lose any troops, and guessing the enemy troops just weren't very good apart from the generals, so that was fine. And with that win I felt confident enough to send more troops out to my strike force at Litash, because Mount Graham is probably a bit safer. We have a mercifully uneventful end turn, so now we can start reinforcing. Hopefully Angmar have stopped throwing things at us, and we'll get a chance to build up and perhaps go after them again. We have this Litash thing, and I could attack them right now, but it's good that I didn't actually. I considered doing it, but then I saw that they're going to have 2 units of garrison spawning, some orcs and humans, appropriate enough for their faction, and seeing that, I figured attacking this thing isn't going to be as cheeky as I thought. We probably need more stuff, and if Angmar aren't going to show up, then we will be able to bring over more stuff in the next turn. So with that in mind, we're just going to leave the siege going. And here we are in the next turn after another mercifully uneventful end turn sequence. Now we've got a more substantial army, and more importantly, now I've also got a ram. Before I only had 2 ladders, and I just haven't learned my lesson with this mod. Ladders and siege towers are just there as a joke. They don't work, and this battle is going to be no exception. We're just checking out their freely spawned units there. They're okay tier. Now here's the battle, and here's me realizing my mistake. They've got this nice wall that looks like I might be able to ladder it, but it's not going to happen. They're falling back from the wall as the battle starts. They're just going to do the old sit on the capture point thing. And I'm going to have to go around the side entrance where I sent my one ram, because this approach isn't going to happen. Thought we had something there. So most of these troops now go around to the other side of the town, where we're going to open the gate. Here's me trying to capture their front gate. Sometimes in this game I've noticed if you kind of walk into the gate, the trigger zone for where you capture it is slightly sticking through the gate, so you can capture it by just running up to it. This wasn't one of those cases, but we also have troops on the other side because I've already opened that side entrance. So there you go, now the troops I left behind here can move on in, and we can start setting up to engage the enemy. My plan was pretty much to try and draw them off the capture point, because that's always going to be better. We want to fight them where they can, in theory, rout, and if we can surround them, that will help us out, although we are very much lacking in melee troops. You can see our little thin lines over there. My overall strategy is to make the enemy fight near the wall, because I've put all of my archers on the wall, so from up here we have nice line of sight of things, and I was hoping we can shoot into melees and stuff like that. We also get extra range and maybe extra power from being up there, not quite sure about that. Handily, the enemy do come over to fight my little melee lines here, so we're going to find out how this goes. One downside to this that I didn't think about was that now that the enemy are closer to the wall, they actually reactivate the towers, so we are going to be fighting while getting shot by the ballista towers. Not very nice. I went in to take the point over there, but the issue is the AI noticed. That was very mean of them. They started sending their witch knights back to the point. So we aren't going to be able to go for a time of victory. Here's me just sort of looking at the towers, and you could just about see there they're shooting something out. It doesn't seem to be doing devastating damage. I'm guessing it has low quality towers, but anyway. Now we just have to wait and see if our archer plan works, since it is going to have to be them taking out most of the enemies. One of their units routed and went back to the capture point. That's why there's now this little fight over there. Plus I'm trying to engage their witch knights, but that fight's not going to be going very well for us. We can use our horse archers to some extent in this battle. The issue we're going to have with the horse archers is that they're mostly dead, so doing things like this, where I set up behind them and shoot into the back, it's a bit effective, but not really. I'm pretty sure at this stage doing a melee attack would be better, because I'm sure it's the case in this game as it is in other games, where if you melee attack with one guy, that's all you need to get the rear attack morale debuff and things like that. So a unit of 2 men is useless, but it can rout gigantic enemy blobs. Anyway, we work our way through most of the enemy's infantry, just grinding through them and using up all of our arrows on them, or most of our arrows. And then we just have to fight the witch knights, so I didn't really know how to do this, so I kind of disengaged, and very nicely they went and just sat on the capture point again. This gave me time to organise a line of my archers, who do have a couple of arrows left. So I figured let's try and hammer them with all of our archers at once at relatively close range. This might cut them down. It doesn't really. We get the odd kill. I'm guessing these guys have enough shield and armour that arrows have a very low probability of inflicting damage. So all it really does is make the witch knights charge out at our archers, but at this stage that was how it was always going to be really, since our army is pretty much just archers and horse archers. We've lost so many melee troops grinding our way through all the battles that all of our frontline forces are pretty much just ranged units at this stage. So we're going to have to just grind them down with the ranged units in melee. We have enough stuff that can be done, probably just wasn't the best trade. And here's the result. So our army is now thinned out to the point when it has pretty much no melee troops, but that doesn't matter if we don't get attacked again, because we've reached the edge of Angmar territory in this direction. This territory we've taken is actually very good. I didn't realise this before, but it's one of their major settlements. So that's great. We've denied the enemy the ability to recruit a bunch of units, I expect, and denied them some money. So we'll hang out here, and one day this will let us recruit a bunch of units, I expect, although that day might be beyond the end of this campaign because of how long it takes to set that up. At the start of the next turn, amid some bad news for the dwarves over there by the looks of things, we are going to get a new general. Glorfindel returns. Apparently he's been out seeing what Sauron's been up to, and he's been up to something naughty, and he's so inspired by this, he is going to join the battle for Middle-earth. So we now get this new general with a nice cavalry unit bodyguard. He's max rank as well, so that's pretty good. We were going to want to bring this guy up to the front line to join our newly forming army. That army is right here, currently being led by my recently arrived inferior general. I've moved them over to the border to the west of Mount Graham, rather than having them defend as I originally planned, because I spotted the Dúnedain are currently attacking the next Angmar place over, so I thought we might as well go over and help out, if we can, as soon as possible. Here's me trying to hide my army. I took those ballistas out, because I had this vague memory that you can't hide with siege equipment, but the ballistas then go into hiding, so I'm guessing you can. I think someone explained it to me at some point like years ago. It's maybe something to do with how many movement points you have, whether you're allowed to hide or not. Something like that. Anyway, we come to the next turn, and it looks like the Dúnedain have captured this settlement, although there is also an Angmar force standing right outside. At first, I'm kind of setting up here as if I'm going to fight them. What I wanted to do is have that other Dúnedain force come into the battle as well. But the rules don't work like the rules in the best game of all time, Godless Tactics, where an army that's standing behind you will join you in a fight. They have to be standing next to the guys who are being attacked, the enemy. So, I'm going to cancel that battle after setting it up, because I did want to get some allies involved, and as it happens, in the Dúnedain turn, they just step forwards and initiate the battle, so we do get the battle I was going for. This one's actually a bit better, in fact, because our allies are leading the attack, so they'll fight the enemy first. Of course, I'm thinking of sacrificing our brave allies to save more important elven lives. And indeed, the Dúnedain don't wait around, they just move up immediately and start showering arrows onto the Angmar force. That's good for us, and the Angmar don't seem to pay much attention to them. They're moving up the hill to try and take a defensive position. Of course, we have to wait a while before we can intervene, because we're gradually coming onto the map. Annoyingly, the Dúnedain weren't doing their target prioritization very well. They're firing at things far away from them, so that's probably going to be doing less damage, especially shooting uphill, maybe? We still don't know. Anyway, now it's time for me to come over and get involved. The first thing we can do is, of course, throw some cav in, since they'll arrive first. Here, got some cav against their longbows with a bit of a downhill charge. Not going to be enough to take them out, but at the very least, it's enough to stop them from firing, and that might be better for us than having them kill us in melee. Everything else needs to start moving up, and in this army we do have quite a lot of good units. This is the debut use of our official post-barracks events units, the guys with the silver armor here. They have like 10 higher defense than our regular troops and a bit higher attack as well. So they're going to be much better, although it's super hard to get them back, so we're probably not going to see many more of these troops. It takes an extremely long time to get more than one unit of each type. So, in they go. In this fight, we don't need to work too hard, because the Dúnedain are sacrificing themselves, distracting the enemy, so when we come in, we're pretty much always making flank and rear attacks, and that's going to help us out with routing the enemy pretty easily. Here we are a bit later when that's pretty much happened. We didn't kill enough of them before the mass rout, so we're going to chase them down and grab some more kills. We've got plenty of cav to do that. We end up losing something like 30 troops. Most of the losses were concentrated among the Dúnedain, so that's what we were going for here. And that's another Angmar army down, but it turns out there's another bigger Angmar army just to the north, and the Dúnedain force that helped us out there actually went over to it and lost in a very brazen battle, and now they are back. So we need to do something about this next one by the looks of things. If we can take them down, the territory behind them is probably going to be very exposed. However, I don't want to advance against them right now, because Glorfindel is on the way with some other reinforcements as well. So instead we're going to cluster everything up into one big army, and now we've actually almost got a full stack for the first time. We're just missing one unit. So this is our best army ever, I think. The Angmar force goes back to be near the settlement, so no showdown right now. Our forces will just start moving up, ready to do something later. And there is Gandalf chilling over there. Looks like he's busy setting up a watchtower, probably saving the world in some way. So yeah, we're just going to hide our army now. What I want is for that big army to just walk off, because from my hidden position I can strike at the settlement, so we'll see what they do. Here's the start of the next turn. They didn't do anything is the answer, so we're still kind of where we were before. But here's an interesting message. Umbarim fleet on the move. This is the thing that people had warned me about in the comments. The bad thing is about to happen. So basically, a stack's on the way in some ships from somewhere, and it mentions there in the message they're going for Mithlond, so that's the tip-off that we need to put something there right now. Luckily, Mithlond has now got some pretty good recruitment options since I've built a lot of stuff here. So we'll spam out some good units as quickly as we can, which is not very quickly basically. But it's worth a go. The only other thing I was thinking of is potentially going out with ships to try and stop the invasion. But we'd have to find it and stuff, so we're not going to do that. We'll recruit those units, and we do have some more units coming back from that battle against the goblins previously. So we're going to have something like 3/4 of an army in Mithlond after like 3 more turns. Back on the front lines, with not much having happened, I decided to just do the same thing again. I just hid a bit closer to the settlement, still hoping the main force will walk off. In this situation, what we really want is the main force to walk off, but the smaller army standing next to it to stay there because it's in a siege draw-out situation. What we do see is the big army walks off to attack the reinforcement unit of Cav I had trailing my main force trying to catch up. So that's unfortunate because they do pursue them and force them into battle. Although it also achieves my goal of getting them away from the settlement. Not sure if that's a worthy sacrifice, but since we have to make it, let's do it. I did manually fight the battle, as you can see. I figured our Cav might be able to hack their way through a whole bunch of the enemy's ranged wargs, and because they didn't do a very good job of getting out of the way, we actually get a nice rear charge on them right here. So I thought I'll just leave my men to grind down all of the warg archers and warg skirmishers and stuff, and just take out a couple of units maybe. By the end of the grind, we killed like 100 for the loss of 50. Not all that good, but probably better than what the auto-resolve would have given us. So that's that. At the start of the next turn, news comes in that Minas Tirith is gone, so things are going pretty badly over there on the front lines of the big war against the Dark Lord. But here, we've got what we want. The small army did actually stand outside the settlement, so we do end up with this siege draw-out battle. Annoyingly, they've got a few good units, and the balance bar is even. This will be another fight where one of our main priorities is staying alive because we might have to do a more difficult battle very soon after this. With my ballistas being here in the army, I'm pretty sure that tempts the enemy to just charge right at me, so while we're the attacker, we don't have to do anything fancy to get this one going. In they come, charging out with these wargs, as they usually do. Gonna hit them with some arrows, hopefully would cut them down. Actually, it was less effective than I thought. We do have our better archers in the force now. We just don't have many archers overall due to all of our bad archers dying before this point. So our ranged attack potential isn't that much. But we can now try out Glorfindel and his special Cav. I think they're the same kind of Cav that we used against the goblins in that battle in the last part. And I'm sure they're way better than ranged wargs, so we'll just cut right through those guys. The enemy's main blob now makes its way over, and I'm going to move forward to engage them. I was conscious of the fact that we need to get some surrounds going, not just for the purpose of routing, but for the purpose of stopping the enemy leaving the battlefield, since this is a siege draw-out. So I'm going to be somewhat aggressive with my infantry, and that's going to work against my plan of keeping my force as alive as possible. Standing in a nice big line would probably be better for that. But we're getting in there for this mixed melee all over the place, and I'll try to micro the archers to possibly not shoot at our own men quite so much. Looks like we've cleared up the enemy's ranged cav on the flank there, so it's time to move on in. These lancers are going to get a nice juicy charge into the back of these Iron Crown warriors, the swordsmen, and we're also fighting them with our good infantry, and all together that causes this unit to rout. I'm sure that unit must have been from the first army rather than the second, because what we'll see in this battle is some of the enemy's good units rout at pretty high strength, and some of them just never rout, probably because of the presence of a general in the second army. So now we've got that right flank secured, it's time to start cycle charging our lancers and our horse archers to try and do something. Got plenty of horse archers out on the left as well, they're just not doing all that much, kind of sniping at the enemy blobs for now. The grind goes on, and this is where things start to get a bit annoying, because I was hoping to get more routes than we were seeing. Like, there's a pretty decent unit routing out of a fight, but a much more dead unit is still in the fight and grinding on against us. The upshot of this is that we're going to take quite a lot of casualties in these fights, because the enemy's units aren't that bad. We do have some low quality units for the elves in there. I'm pretty sure things like our Lindar guards, our starter swordsmen, are about on par with the enemy's decent armoured infantry. and if we're going to be trading 1 for 1 with them, that's probably not very good, considering that we can't get our troops back as easy. I accidentally had my archers fighting in melee there against their halberdiers because they went on guard mode and got drawn forwards. But it looked like it was going really well, so I just left them in the fight. Here's an example of a few enemies just refusing to rout in the middle of a melee. I've got some horse archers right at the back ready to catch things as they try to leave the field, so we've got the siege draw-out setup going. We just can't actually get rid of the enemy, so the cycle charges continue and the grinds continue, and here we are later on when things are finally starting to wrap up and turn in our favour. These small groups though really are taking a hammering. Even some of their inferior troops just refuse to rout while fighting on multiple sides. We got the general right towards the end, the worst time to get him. So here is the result. We took them down big time, but we did lose quite a lot of guys actually. I'm guessing our total losses are somewhat proportional to the large size of our force, so maybe it's not as bad as it seems. But it was a bit of a nasty one. We don't want to see triple figures losses really, given how hard it is to get our troops back. The good news is we did successfully do the siege draw out, so we move into the town. It's another pretty decent town, so denying the enemy this is probably going to screw over their recruitment even more. I'm sure they're still better at recruiting than we are, but a couple more wins in battle and we might actually be able to have the upper hand on them. At the start of the next turn, looks like Mordor are taking over the world. We technically don't have to fight them in this campaign, so that's not too much of an issue. I think it's just the goblins and Angmar and maybe Isengard, I can't quite remember, that our victory objectives are concerned with. Now in the next turn I'm going to do something very nice. The main Angmar force that was nearby has walked off to the west to challenge a Dúnedain siege of one of their other towns. I thought, while we don't need to do this, let's just straight up save the Dúnedain, which we'll do at the start of the next part. And of course, we're going to see the mysterious army arrive at Mythlond.